So you are thinking about getting a budgie or two. Well, you've come to the right channel because today's video, I'm going to be giving you some tips on owning a budgie for the first time. So the first step is where you're going to get a budgie from. Now you got a few options. You can find some budgies in a shelter and sometimes in a rescue. You can get a budgie that's being rehomed from someone else. You can look on your local classifieds and you can find a breeder. Some breeders will hand feed them, which means, and hand tame them as well, which means they're tamed for you right off the bat. You just have to work with them. And you can get them from your local pet store. Okay, now what age is best to get your first budgie? Well, you want to get a budgie that's a young budgie, preferably one that just got weaned that you can work with. It's better to get a baby, but you can get older birds. Now, if you get a rehome bird, some of them are already tame, and they're already tame, so you don't have to worry about that. So you can get older birds as well. I mean, you can tame them too. It just takes a lot of more time and more patience to tame, an older bird, or if you're not really want a bird that's really so tame, it wouldn't matter what age you get your budgie at. Now, when you're looking for your budgie, you want to decide if you want a male or female, and even if that matters to you. But the way to tell that if you're getting a male or female, especially if it's a baby, you want to look at the nostrils. Come here, sweetie. Up. He might fly away, but now if you can see, let's see if you can see him. Show your nostrils. See, this is a male. He has a blue cere. Now he's an adult male. So has babies. The males, when they're really young, like 4 to 6 weeks, they all have pink ceres. Now the males will get a blue cere, and some males will keep their pink cere. Females will have white around their nostrils. Then their ceres will turn tan or dark brown when in breeding mode. So has babies, when you're looking for your baby, if you want a male or a female, look at the ceres. If you see any white around the actual nose holes, the nostrils, then it will be a female. It'll look blue, it'll be light blue, and you'll think, oh, male. But look at the cere. If you see white, it's going to be a female. So if you want a male, don't get one with the white around the nostrils. You want to get one that's all like a uniform color, all blue. It'll be light blue. It'll get darker blue as they get older. And this is Splash. Can you see his cere? It's pink. So he's a male. So it's a common myth saying that females have pink ceres and males have blue ceres. Although males do have blue ceres. But the males are the ones with the pink cere. Depends on the mutation color of the bird. So this is my male. His name is Splash, and he's got a pink cere. See? So the males are pink or blue. All right, what a good boy you are. So if you're thinking of getting just one budgie or two is going to be double the noise, right? Even one budgie makes a lot of noise. So make sure everyone in your family is okay with hearing a budgie chirping all day long. Sometimes they chirp really nice, and sometimes they chirp very loud and very, sharp pitched, right? And the more budgies you have, the louder it's going to be. So before you're thinking about getting a budgie, make sure you can tolerate their noise. I love it. I have 8 budgies and all the other birds too. I love budgies' noises. They're so nice. But some family members might not like it. So you have to make sure your whole family is on board with having a budgie or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, and the noise tolerance that everyone can take. Now you have to decide if you want one budgie or 2. I suggest having 2, as budgies are flock animals. They live in huge flocks, and there's nothing more nicer to see than 2 budgies preening each other, eating together, playing together, bathing together. Now, as long as they get along, 2 of them, is not an issue. But sometimes, you know, if they do squabble, you will need 2 separate cages that you can keep side by side and let them out together. But I recommend 2 so they can have each other has friends. And yeah, you'll enjoy it. You'll see, and you can tame 2. You can tame 2 budgies at the same time. So it's not impossible to do that. And you have to decide if you want an English budgie, which they're bigger budgies. They're like the exhibition budgies. They're the budgies you see in the bird show. They're big. And this one, actually, this one's a mixture between an English and we can call them a regular budgie or American budgie. You know, the kind you see in the pet store that are smaller. So you want to decide if you want, you know, the regular small budgie or you want an English budgie. Now, the difference is the size, of course. But I find, I have both. I find the English budgies, the bigger ones, are more calmer. They're more docile. And, you know, they're big and fluffy and they're cute, but they all act the same. They're budgies. These little ones are more active, more a little hyper and always on the go. But one downfall is the English budgie can possibly live a shorter life than the regular budgie because they're bred to be big and a lot of them have heart issues and they only live till 5 or 6. But some have lived longer, of course. If they're bred properly, bred from, you know, healthy parents, they can live longer. But the majority of them don't live as long as a regular budgie. So you can think about that, which one, what size you would like to have, a bigger one or a smaller one. Now, when you go get your bird cage, you want to get the cage first, obviously, before you get your bird. So some of these pet stores, they don't really sell the appropriate size cages. When you go into the pet store, you'll see a huge, you know, range of cages. A lot of them will be really small, and some of them say, you know, for budgies, and there's a package deal, you get food and toys in them, but they're really tiny. They're not appropriate for a budgie. Just because the pet store sells them doesn't mean that they're the right cage for budgies. So the bigger, the better for your budgie. Now the bar spaces should be, like the spaces of the bar, should be no wider than a 1/2 inch, because otherwise they'll get their head stuck in there. I've seen many people saying on the Facebook groups that their budgie can squeeze out of the bars. So when you're picking a cage, you know what I do is just test the bars, put your fingers on the bars and squeeze them together and see how flexible they are. If they're really flexible, I recommend you don't getting that cage because your budgie can squeeze right out of there. You want a cage where the bars are very sturdy and they don't bend. Now, I recommend a cage that is wider than tall. You don't want a cage that's really tall. The tall ones don't do any good. They're like, in the pet stores, you see them, they're like 18 inches wide, but they're tall. They look huge, but they're only tall. Birds don't, you know, fly up and down. They got to fly side to side, right? And most of the time, these tall cages, what happens is the bird stays on top and all they do is poop on everything below. So if you got perches below there or food, water, it all gets pooped on. So it's wasted space because they just stay on the top and they don't use the bottom. So I don't recommend those tall cages, and I don't recommend a round cage. That'll drive your bird crazy. There's no corners. You know, the bird's going in circles, and usually the top of the cage, the bars are too close together where they can get their feet stuck or their face stuck or anything like that. Round cages are not appropriate for any bird, in my opinion. And the placement of the cage. You want to put the cage where the back of the cage is against a wall so the bird will feel secure. You want to put them in a bright area, you know, not in a really dark room where they don't get any light. Just make sure they're not near like air conditioning vent or a heating vent. You don't want that to blow, you know, when it turns on and off, blowing cold air, blowing hot air. You want to just avoid that area, right? Just put them in a nice bright place, and their back of the cage is against the wall so they'll feel secure. And it's best to place the cage on a stand. Sometimes cages come with a stand, or you want to get a stand, some kind of wooden stand. Never put your bird's cage on the floor. Birds need to be high up. Okay, when they're on the floor, it's like they're vulnerable. They got a lot of prey animals after them. They're afraid on the floor. And so never just place their cage on the floor. Always put it at like eye level or even higher, not too high, but eye level is good. That way you can interact with them and, you know, look in the cage and see them. So make sure you have a stand, some kind of stand for your cage. If it does not come with the stand, just get like some kind of table or something. So it's best to have it at eye level. Okay, so when you get a new cage, some of the cages that you find, they will have these plastic perches or these dowel perches. You want to take those out. You don't want to use these. These can hurt birds' feet, especially the plastic perches. And these dowels, they're a little bit slippery and they're too uniform all over. They're one length. Your bird needs to have a foot exercise, right? It needs different size perches and different woods. This is one of the perches that I have. They attach to the side of your cage, and this is, I believe, a fur perch. There's lots of different kinds of perches, but just look for the natural perches, and they're different. It's thinner here and thicker here, and like this one as well. This is a longer one. This is nice, right? You want to get a nice one that's not too slippery, and also, you know, you can get rope perches, but just be careful with them because the birds will chew them, and you have to replace them if the birds chew them because you don't want them to ingest the rope. And there's a petty perch that I recommend you put in your bird's cage. This is a bigger one though for a bigger bird, but they come in smaller. But don't put it on the top of the cage where they sleep. You want to put it down lower where they, you know, go and eat. These perches will help keep your bird's nails short, right? Because when they walk on them, it files their nails. And it is like abrasive. So that's why you don't put it on the top of the cage, because if they sit on this all night long, it's going to hurt the bottom of their feet. They can get like bumblefoot or any kind of, you know, pressure sore. So just use this more toward the bottom of the cage, and that way when they step on it occasionally, it will help their nails. Now, when you're setting up the cage, the perch placement is important as well. You want to put the perches where, you know, they're not going to get pooped on from above from another perch, right? You have to make sure they're equally spaced and all that. And when you get the cage and you get a wide cage, you want to put the perch this way. You don't want to put them across. Like some of the cages, they come with the perches across like this, and the bird only can hop here to here. You put them this way, like one on each side, like this. The bird can fly from here to here, back and forth, right? They want to spread it apart. That's why wider is more important. You put them this way from the back to the front of the cage, so they have all that room to fly back and forth. Because if they're just up and down, they really don't have room to fly anywhere, right? So you want to spread them out where they can fly, and you can get some rope perches, lots of different perches you can get. I'm going to be putting all the links down below. You can go have a look at my Amazon list for Budgies and see what I have there, just to give you some ideas, and that way you can decide what to get. So also in the cage, you're going to want some mineral blocks and a cuttle bone. They're both different. Cuttle bone is for calcium, especially if you have a female, and the mineral blocks is for males and females. It helps, you know, trim their beaks while they're chewing it, and gives them minerals, of course, as well. And you want to get some toys. Now, some of the toys you see in the pet store aren't really appropriate. There's a lot of plastic toys. You know, you can probably get one plastic toy, but birds really need to chew. They need a lot of shredding toys, and they're just called shredding toys. So always make sure your bird has something to chew, or your bird might just chew your wall or your door frame. But they always need to chew, especially females. They chew a lot. Okay, and you'll need some food and water bowls, but most likely the cage that you get will come with at least one food bowl, one water bowl, or, you know, two bowls, one for water, one for food. But if you have more than one budgie, you want to get extra bowls, and you need an extra bowl for the fresh foods as well. If you get 4 budgies, you're going to need 4 food bowls, because what can happen is one budgie can be protective of its food and he won't let the other budgies eat. So you have to watch for that. You have to watch, because the budgies will chase away the other budgies and they can starve to death. So always have extra bowls, and even extra bowls of water if you have multiple birds. And it's best to change the water every day. When it's dirty, you might need to change it twice a day or 3 times a day. But when you change the water, don't just dump it out and then replace with water. You want to wash the bowl with soap and water, because what happens is the water builds up on the sides of the bowl and it creates like a slime. It's really gross. You can't see it, but if you wipe your finger in there, it's kind of gross, or get a Kleenex and wipe it, you'll see, and sometimes it looks like it's orange, but it's growing bacteria. So you want to keep them clean. If you just refresh the water, and the bacteria is still in the bowl. So always wash the food and water bowls every day, even the food bowls, because they can grow bacteria on the bottom of the bowl. If you just dump the food and put more food in, you got to wash them. So I recommend you do that on a daily basis. And something you should be aware of is toxins and what you're going to use around your bird. Birds are very, very sensitive. They have a delicate respiratory system. You can't smoke around your birds. You can't use air fresheners. You can't use perfumes. And you have to be careful with your frying pans, which contain Teflon. Teflon is dangerous to birds. If you overheat your pans, it'll kill your bird in an instant. Even curling irons or hair dryers, anything that has a coating of Teflon is very, very toxic to your bird. You want to be careful. Whatever you use, any scents, sprays, cleaners, you won't be able to use those anymore. Hot water is good. Vinegar and water is good. And you can boil some special leaves to make your house smell nice. Look it up. I can't think of it right now, but there's stuff you can boil to make your house smell nice, because basically your house is going to stink now unless you just use vinegar and water. But so make sure you look up what's toxic and what's okay to use around birds. And for the bottom of the cage, you want to put some kind of like substrate. And what I use is either newspaper or plain newspaper or paper towel. They're the best ones that you could use. I want to say, do not use the corn cob that they sell in the pet stores, or like cat litter or bird litter. It's just that it can grow mold. I find, and I talk to people, that when you use that stuff and the birds, go into the bathroom all over it, you can't really see it. So you neglect to change the cage. The paper should be changed like daily. When you have like corn cobs or litter at the bottom, you can't see it, so it looks clean and you leave it. And what happens is it grows mold. And sometimes the birds can eat it, so you don't want them to ingest that. So I suggest you use newspaper. Just find out about what kind of ink is used in your paper in your wherever you live, because some dyes are toxic, some aren't. Some are just vegetable dyes, which is fine for the bird, but sometimes the bird will get colored black if he's playing at the bottom of the cage. So I like to use like plain newsprint or just paper towel. Paper towel is more expensive, of course, but you can just roll it up into a ball and throw it away. It's very easy. It's white. It's clean. You can check the droppings with that, and the plain newsprint as well, as long as you can see the droppings, because you have to monitor them for the birds, to check the birds' health. And when I change the bottom of the cage, I change it every night before they go to bed. And the reason being is because I cover my birds' cages. And, if I cover their cage and I don't change the paper, they're breathing in all their poop, right? So you want to clean while they go to bed. And another good thing about changing the paper before they go to bed is you can see how their sleep pattern is, how they're sleeping. Because birds will usually sleep in one spot. So when you uncover them in the morning, you'll see where the bird has been sitting, because there'll be a little bit of poop below where they're sitting. Now, if you see poop all over, that means the bird didn't get a good night's sleep. That means the bird is moving around. Something's bothering it. Maybe it's sick. Maybe it has mites. Something's bothering the bird if they keep moving around. Normally, they sit in one spot and will poop in that spot. And you can check their droppings for any diarrhea or any abnormal droppings. So that's the way I do it, and I recommend it for you as well. And you can see your bird's sleeping habits. If they're not sleeping properly, then you want to investigate why. Now, talking about covering the cage, I personally cover my cage. It would depend on your situation, because not everybody will cover the cage. It depends on where your bird cage is too. If you're up all night, watching TV and there's light coming in the cage, there's a lot of activity, you want to cover your cage so the bird can sleep. Because if the cage isn't covered, he's going to be up all night. Now, birds will need to sleep between 10 to 12 hours a night, right? So the only way they can sleep is if you cover them. And if you're watching TV, you want to turn the volume down. If you're on your computer, if it's in a busy room, you want to cover it. If you think they don't need to be covered, that's fine as well. It's your choice. If there's somewhere where they're not getting disturbed and it's darker in the evening, you don't have to cover them. But sometimes in the summer, when the sun is shining in your window at 5 a.m, they're going to start chirping, right? So if you don't want to be woken up, you can cover them. And that way, when you wake up in the morning, you can uncover them and then they start to sing. So budgies do need to come out of their cage. You can't just buy a budgie, stick it in a cage, give it food and water, and leave it alone. That's not fair. It's not really healthy for a bird to live inside a cage all its life. I see a lot of comments on Facebook, people saying they never let their budgie out, which is really sad. And if you have predator animals, if you got a cat or a dog or other birds, sometimes it's unsafe. But you have to make it safe for your bird to fly. It needs to fly. Now, if you do decide to clip its wings, which I don't clip, I don't recommend it, but some people do, they still need to come out. They need to come out of their cage, right? And it'll be like you never come out of your house. It's not healthy for them. You can get them a play stand that can go on top of the cage. You can hang things on the ceiling, like buoys and ropes. You can have a dedicated room for your bird where it's safe. You can close the curtains, the blinds, the doors. Make everything safe. You have to bird-proof your home to let your birds out of the cage. So what are you going to feed your budgie? So you can't just feed them seed and water and that's it. Seed is not very healthy for them. It causes them to get fatty liver disease, right? A lot of budgies are prone to that because they eat a lot of seed. You want to feed them fresh foods like dark leafy greens. They love carrots, broccoli, cauliflower, cucumber, apples, grapes, like a lot of more vegetables than fruits. You want to avoid too much fruits because it's high in sugar and they got to wear it off, right? So if you do give them fruits, I suggest 2 or 3 times a week, but more vegetables, especially dark leafy greens. They really love that. There's a lot of things you can feed your bird. Just do not feed avocado, onions, sweet stuff, salty stuff. But I suggest you making a chop. I will be doing a video on how you make chop in the future, but you can look it up and you'll find some chop recipes for your bird that they can eat more than just seed, right? And you can offer some pellets. Sometimes pellets is a debate. Some people don't believe in it. Some people do. But pellets should not be just the basic food because they can't just eat that alone. And then you can't just eat seeds alone. I give seeds, pellets, and a lot of fresh foods and fresh water every day. And when you first get your bird, sometimes your bird won't eat. So I want to suggest, make sure, it's okay, you want some millet? You have spray millet, especially when you first get your bird. Some birds won't eat for a couple days, which is not good for them. But birds love spray millet. It comes in different sizes. Oh, this one's broke. Anyway, it comes in different sizes. Here's a little small one. And budgies especially, if they won't eat, the only thing they'll eat would be millet, right? When you first get them. So you want to make sure they're eating something. So millet is like a lifesaver sometimes when your bird is sick, right? Or you just get one home, you offer millet. It will eat, once it starts eating millet, give it a few days, it'll get better. But then you want to take the millet away once they're eating all their food. Then you can use millet as a training for training or for treats. Anyways, millet is a great way to train your bird. And, if your bird comes out of the cage, it's a good way to get them back in. You just show them a millet bound. These break. You can just break them. You don't have to give them the whole thing, right? You can just break off a piece like that. You can break off a piece so they have a little piece. And you can entice them to come back in the cage, right? And you say, good bird, and you give them a little bit of millet. So whenever you get a new bird, make sure you have spray millet. And if they're not feeling well, sometimes they don't eat, but they will eat this. So that's my secret, my tip. My tip to you, make sure you have spray millet. But this is fattening, so you don't want to be putting one of these in their cage daily. You don't want to put it in their cage because you want to use it as a a treat or for training. If they have it every day, they won't see it as a treat and they won't care. They won't listen to you. You won't train them if they have this available. So make this like a special treat to spray millet. And another healthy food for your birds would be sprouting. Look up sprouting for your bird. Sprouting some seeds, it's the best way to feed your bird. And they love it. You just have to be careful. You have to rinse it really well and know what you're doing because it can get moldy. So you have to be careful. You have to be right on top of that sprouting and they will love it. Because in the wild, they eat buds and seeds that aren't ripe. They're just, like kind of like sprouted, right? They don't eat like polished seeds in the wild, right? They eat buds and flower buds that are just ready to open, just like the sprouts. So look that up for sprouting for your birds. And I might be making a video about that in the future as well. Now, for bathing your bird, birds do need to have a bath daily. I offer my birds a bath daily. There's several different ways that you can offer a bath, and some birds will only prefer one way over another. Now, there's baths that you can attach to your cage if you got the doors, that open up. You can attach the bath to the cage where they go inside and they'll take a bath. But some birds prefer like a pan of water in the bottom of the cage. Well, they'll go take a bath in that. And some of them love to bathe in wet greens. You can just put wet greens in a bowl and they'll go and take a bath, or you can hang a big piece of romaine lettuce and wet it on the side of the cage and they'll go take a bath in that. But some birds, which my birds love, is the fountain, the water fountain. They love running water. And if your bird is really tame, you can sit them on your hand and put them in your hand and run the tap water in your sink. And they'll take a bath in there. And it's so cute. And it feels beautiful when they're on your hand taking a bath. But you want to try all these different options of how to entice them to bathe. I do a video on that as well, which I'll be putting everything down below in the description. So make sure you go check everything out. And you can see how many ways there are to entice your bird to take a bath. You'll also need a carrier for your bird. You want to be able to take your bird to the vet. You need a carrier. Sometimes you'll need a carrier to put them in for temporary purposes while you're cleaning the cage, or if you're have to move your bird or like has a hospital cage. I use some of my carriers as hospital cage. If your bird is sick, you need to put your bird in a smaller space, right? And the carrier can double as a hospital cage, right? And there's several different ones that you can get. And just always make sure you have a carrier. You never know when you're going to need it. If there's an emergency, you got to leave your house quickly. You got to go to the vet, or you got to go anywhere with your bird. You need a carrier because your cage is going to be way too big to be carrying anywhere, especially to the vet, right? Because you're not going to have those tiny little cages, right? But, you can get a tiny cage that you can use as a carrier as well. But always make sure you have a carrier. And make sure you have some disposable income. Now, if you're a younger person who lives at home and you want a bird and you're bugging your parents for a bird, you have to realize that you need to spend money on your bird, right? Your parents have to be on board with you having a bird, and they have to realize if your bird gets sick, you need to go to an avian vet, not just a regular vet, not a dog and cat vet, an avian vet. And sometimes they're more expensive than a dog and cat vet. Now, and where I live here in Canada, Ontario, the examination alone is $100. Then there's medication. Then there's blood test, x-rays, whatever else the bird needs. That's extra. So if you're a younger person, expect your parents to get you a budgie, you have to either have a job, save some money, or your parents have to be on board with going to pay that vet bill for you, because you can't let your bird suffer. Now, obviously, if you want a bird and you have a job and you're fine with this, that's no problem. But always realize, just because budgies are cheap does not mean, they don't need vet care. I hear this all the time. Oh, my budgie was only $20. Why should I go spend $100 at the vet? It doesn't matter. Your bird could be free. It doesn't matter how much your pet costs. You have to spend the money on the vets and you have to care for them, right? And you have to be buying all this food, all this fresh food. So they're not cheap. Just because they're a cheap bird doesn't mean they're cheap to take care of, right? because all that vegetables and stuff. But I'm sure you eat vegetables too, so you can share it with your bird, right? Because I do see a lot of people saying, which is sad, I can't afford to feed my bird fresh food. I can't afford to make my bird chop. I'm thinking, don't they eat salads? Don't they eat cucumbers? Don't they eat carrots? I don't know. But, you know, you as a person should be eating healthy too, right? So you have to be able to afford a budgie and the upkeep, and especially the vet bills. That's a really hard one. I spend hundreds and thousands of dollars on my birds going to the vet. So I just wanted to put that out there, and I hope you understand everything. So make sure you go check out my playlist of all my budgies, and all the links down below. I have an Amazon list. I have lots of videos on all my budgies, and you know how to bathe them, and just seeing my flock and any information. So go make sure you check that out, and let me know if you like my video and if this video will help you decide if you're going to get a budgie or not. All right, thank you very much for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Bye.